I am Rachel Matson. At the reading of my grandfather's will, the lawyer handed me a check for $27,400,000 0 cents. My parents didn't hesitate. My mother tore it in half while my father lit the pieces on fire, right in front of me. They didn't even blink as the ashes curled into smoke. "This is what you get for cutting us off," they spat. But I didn't flinch. I didn't reach for the pieces, because what they destroyed wasn't what they thought it was. And what they never imagined? That my grandfather had left the real inheritance somewhere they'd never think to look. Now, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Because this isn't just family drama. This is what happens when the one they tried to silence decides it's time to speak. I hadn't worn heels in years, but I did that morning, partly to hear them echo against the marble floor, mostly to remind myself I still had ground to stand on. No one noticed. Not my mother, who scanned past me like I was just another assistant. Not my father, who gave a single nod like we were acquaintances. And certainly not my sister Tessa, who sat with one knee crossed over the other, oversized sunglasses perched, like she was waiting for a brunch. The family lawyer, Mr. Lambert, cleared his throat. "Let's begin," he said, motioning for us to take our seats. "We're here to fulfill the final wishes of Nathaniel Madsen," he started, voice steady. "All immediate family is present." I sat last, always the last. The room smelled like old pine and floor polish. I fixated on that, instead of how badly my hands were shaking. Across from me, Mom twisted the gold chain around her wrist. Dad sat with his arms folded tight. Tessa tapped her nails against the chair. And when Mr. Lambert opened the folder, she tilted her chin like the throne was already hers. "To Tessa Madsen," he read. "Nathaniel leaves the lake cabin in Vermont and his 1960 Stratocaster." Tessa blinked. "That's it?" He didn't answer, just turned the page. "To David and Helen Madsen, he leaves the grandfather clock, his vinyl collection, and a $15,000 0 cents donation in their name." Mom looked like she'd swallowed soap. Dad let out a huff. "You've got to be kidding." Then Mr. Lambert looked at me. "And to Rachel," he said, pausing. "He leaves the remainder of his financial estate, $27,402,000 0 cents. Silence. Then Dad barked, "What the hell?" Mr. Lambert didn't flinch. "It's notarized. Mr. Madsen made the change in person 3 months ago." "This is ridiculous," Mom snapped. "She hasn't spoken to us in 5 years. "She walked away from this family," Dad added, voice rising. "She doesn't get to stroll back in and cash a fortune." Mr. Lambert remained calm. It was his decision. Then he reached under the table and pulled out a thick brown envelope, sealed in wax. I recognized the stamp. Grandpa's old crest, the one he carved into everything. My fingers hovered before I took it. Inside, a folded check and a single handwritten note. "For the one who stayed strong. You were never forgotten." Before I could read it again, my father's hand shot across the table and snatched the check from my lap. "What are you doing?" I asked, voice level. He didn't answer. He held it up like it might be fake. Mom grabbed the note. "Stay strong," she scoffed. "You mean ungrateful?" Then she ripped the paper in half, and again, until the ink bled into itself. Tessa leaned back, arms crossed. "Oh, please, don't play the victim. You cut us off. Grandpa just felt sorry for you." "That's not true," I said, but Dad was already pulling out his lighter. "David," Mr. Lambert warned, rising. "I'm not letting her buy her way back in," Dad growled. He lit the flame. The check curled fast. Ash fell into the crystal tray like snow. "Now," he said, voice thick with fury, "we're even." I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't try to save the ashes. Mom folded her arms, smug. "This is what happens when you betray your family." "She didn't even come to the hospital," Tessa added. I said nothing, just watched the smoke rise. But what they didn't know, that check was fake. a blank replica I found in Grandpa's study the month before he passed. He told me they'd try to destroy whatever they couldn't control, so we planned for it. The real money, already moved, secured, wired into a trust, untouchable and out of reach. What I held in my coat that day wasn't the check. It was the truth. The folder Grandpa had handed me in secret at a tiny diner outside Baltimore 2 months earlier. I stood, pressed the now empty envelope between my palms, and walked out. No dramatic exit, just the steady echo of my heels on the tile. Louder now. More certain. Outside, the air was sharp. Mid-November in Maryland can feel like the edge of winter. I didn't care. I slid into my car, laid the burnt envelope on the passenger seat, and opened Grandpa's real folder. Across the top, he'd scrawled, "Only open when they burn it." Inside, a new check. Real. Signed in ink I recognized from every birthday card. $27,400,000, 0 cents. Folded beside it, legal documents sealed in a red ribbon, and a tiny note. Let them think they won. That's where it starts. That afternoon, I pulled into the private parking garage of Green Ridge National Bank, the one with unlisted accounts and velvet-covered vaults, where Grandpa always said real power waited. The sun was climbing higher, burning through the thin morning fog. I paused in my car, fingers tight around the steering wheel, watching a single leaf twist and fall from a nearby maple tree. There was something surreal about the moment, like I was arriving not at a bank, but at the beginning of something no one would believe unless they lived it. Mr. Daniels, the trust officer, met me in the lobby. He looked the same as he had 10 years ago. Pressed suit, understated tie, a voice like steady rain. "Miss Madsen," he said, leading me past glass offices and whispered meetings. "Everything has been arranged, just as your grandfather instructed." We didn't speak in the elevator. I was grateful. I didn't need words, only time to brace myself. The vault door hissed open. Inside, drawer 12 slid forward like a story waiting to be told. Mr. Daniels nodded and stepped out. I was alone now. Inside the drawer were 3 items: the real check, a black velvet pouch containing a flash drive, and a bound file of documents. My breath caught when I saw the check. It was real. Heavy stock, raised seal, my name printed clean across the front. Tucked inside the legal file were 2 older wills, one from nearly a decade ago, the other more recent. In both, Tessa and my parents had been the primary heirs, but Grandpa's handwritten notes danced in the margins. David pushed for this. Doesn't feel right. Then another. Helen said Rachel's too fragile to manage it. Wrong. She's the only one who could. The final page was signed and sealed. Everything was mine. Every cent, every clause, every part of the legacy they thought they'd stolen. And finally, the flash drive. I didn't open it until I was back in my apartment, the doors locked, curtains drawn. When the screen blinked to life, Grandpa's face filled the frame. He sat in his study, soft lamplight glowing behind him, surrounded by shelves of worn books. "If you're seeing this, Rachel," he said, voice low but clear, "then they did exactly what I expected." He leaned forward. "I saw what they did to you when they drained your college fund, when they turned your room into a storage closet while you were still in school, when they said you were selfish for wanting your own life." He paused. "You were never weak, you endured. That's power, not a flaw." I swallowed hard, lips tight. I should have stepped in sooner. I thought time would fix it. I was wrong. "But you," his eyes softened, "you never asked for anything. You gave everything. That's why this is yours." I watched it again. Twice, then backed it up to a private drive and buried the USB in the back of my closet, inside the fireproof box I'd bought that morning. Later that night, I wrapped the real check in Grandpa's old wool scarf, the one that still smelled faintly of cedar, and locked it away. Then I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years, the one with college acceptance letters I never pursued, the business plans I once believed I could follow. One in particular caught my eye, a concept for a nonprofit that supported first-gen college students. I'd written it on the back of a diner receipt 5 years ago. I used to whisper it to myself, just get through it. Now I said something else. I'm not that girl anymore. I didn't expect what came next. My phone buzzed at 6:41 a.m. No caller ID. Normally I'd let it go, but something in me said, answer. Rachel? Her voice was light, almost sweet. Tessa. Hey, I know it's early. Sorry. I was hoping maybe we could talk? I didn't reply. She filled the silence. Just us. Like before? Maybe coffee? You pick the place. The last time she said that, I ended up taking the fall for our mother's public meltdown over my disrespectful outfit at Dad's retirement party. But still, I said, 10:30 Walton Cafe. She agreed too quickly. I deleted her number the moment we hung up. I didn't do much before leaving. Let my tea go cold, reviewed the vault files again, paced the apartment twice. When I arrived, the light outside was that pale winter blue that makes everything look washed out. Tessa was already seated, pink cardigan, hair curled just so. She stood, half reaching for a hug, thought better of it. It's been too long, she said, stirring her coffee that clearly hadn't been touched. I've been thinking about those finals weeks here, remember? You with your flashcards, me with banana bread. I gave a small nod. You used to take my tea when you were broke. She laughed a little too loud, then quieter. You were always so prepared, like a grown-up at 20. Silence. I took a sip of chamomile. She leaned in. Mom hasn't eaten since the will reading. Dad barely speaks. They're heartbroken. You cut us out, Rachel. That's cruel. I said nothing. She searched my face. Even Grandpa said you were distant. Did he say that to you, I asked, or did someone else? Her smile cracked. You know, the check. The one you let burn. Was it real? There it was, the reason for this little act. It was just paper, I said. Her eyes narrowed. What? It's gone now. The silence that followed was sharp. Whatever this game is, don't drag it out. We've lost enough. I stood, slipped on my coat. Then don't lose more. As I walked away, her voice followed me. Mom's thinking of contesting the will. I didn't stop. She's welcome to try. That night, I got home and tossed my keys on the table, my coat still clinging with the smell of cinnamon latte and confrontation. I was reaching for the kettle when something caught my eye. A plain white envelope taped directly to my door, just beneath the peephole. Centered, clean. No stamp, no return address. The handwriting was tight, angled, familiar almost. I peeled it off gently and sat at the kitchen table, staring at it for a full minute before opening it. Is inside, one sheet of paper. No greeting, no signature, just 12 words. What they burned wasn't the real check. Don't speak, just move. Box 9 at Valor Securities. You'll understand. I read it again, and again. By the 4th time, I wasn't even breathing. Someone knew. Not just what had happened, but where everything was hidden. I slid the note under the recipe book on my counter like hiding it would make it less real. Then I opened the side drawer, pulled out an old brass key Grandpa gave me when I turned 19. It had come wrapped in a napkin with only 5 words. You'll need this someday. Trust yourself. I'd forgotten about it, until now. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch in silence, staring at the key and that new envelope on the coffee table like they were alive. In the morning, I called Valor Securities, the same firm that handled Grandpa's original vault account. Yes, I believe there's an item reserved under my name. Rachel Madsen, Box 9. The voice on the other end was calm, polite. Yes, Miss Madsen. We'll need 2 forms of ID and the original key. We can see you at 2:30. I didn't play music in the car. I didn't speak. I barely moved, just drove. The building was sleek glass and silence, tucked between a wine bar and a high-rise dentist. The receptionist took my ID and the key, examined both with the kind of precision you don't see in normal banks, then led me to a private room with a single metal table and chair. Box 9 slid forward. Inside, 3 things. First, a cashier's check for $27,400,000 made out in my name. Second, a sealed envelope in red wax with Grandpa's initials stamped across it. And third, a legal envelope titled, "In case they burn everything." My hands trembled as I opened the sealed letter. Rachel, if you're reading this, then they proved me right. The money was never the real gift. The real gift is knowing who they are when the mask falls. Don't let them drag you back into their narrative. You are not small. You never were. Now move like you know that. There were no tears, just a tightness in my chest I'd carried for years finally uncoiling. I resealed the envelope, folded the check, and locked it away in my bag. No one at the desk asked questions. No one looked at me twice as I walked out the glass doors like I hadn't just collected evidence of my rebirth. That night, just as I sat down with soup I didn't really want, I heard it again. The rustle. This time it wasn't tape. It was something soft landing against the door. I opened it. No one there. But under the mat, another envelope. Plain again. No markings. Inside. A message that made my mouth go dry. They're not after the money. They're after the signature that gives you control. Look into Marlowe Holdings. Use your original name. Birth certificate filed in Hagerstown Archive. It's not gone, just buried. My breath caught. Original name? That night, I couldn't sit still. I dug through the fireproof box and found the old birth certificate I'd barely looked at. Rachel Ann Carter. Carter, my mother's maiden name. Madsen had come after. I opened my laptop and typed it in. A death notice blinked back. My name, my face, status, deceased, date of death, 3 weeks ago. Cause, auto-pedestrian collision. I stood up so fast my chair tipped. It wasn't just being cut off. I was being erased. The next day, I went straight to the Hagerstown Records office. The clerk was young, polite, and completely unfazed when I showed her the online entry. "Oh, yeah," she said. "Looks like that was filed through state records. Sometimes it's just clerical, or someone with authority can push it through if it's tied to an estate." I stared at her. "Can I reverse it?" "You'll need ID, social, proof of life, basically. It's a process but not impossible." I gave a dry laugh. "You'd be surprised how hard it is to prove you're not dead." I didn't go home. I went to a nearby motel, paid cash, sat on the edge of a bed that smelled like old cigarettes, and waited until night fell. Then I opened the USB from Grandpa's vault. One file. Watch me first map 4. I clicked. His face filled the screen again. If they filed a death certificate, it means they've escalated. It means they're trying to rewrite more than your inheritance. They're trying to rewrite you. He paused. I left a final file, one they won't think to check. There's a man named Gabriel Rourke, east side of the quarry, off Route 12. Ask for the Hollow. It's not a place. It's a box. Everything's in there. I didn't sleep, again. But not from fear, from clarity, from the sudden, impossible understanding that I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting to exist. At 6:00 a.m. sharp, I checked out of the motel and headed toward the quarry. The drive out past Route 12 was quiet but not peaceful. Every stretch of cracked asphalt felt like a countdown. Every rusted sign and empty gas station passed looked like they were hiding answers. I turned off the main road and followed a gravel path that wound between hills and forgotten warehouses until I reached a faded gate that read Rourke Salvage and Storage. The place looked abandoned, but the keypad at the entrance blinked red until I entered the code Grandpa had etched into the inside of the USB, 111,218. The gate clicked. The lock on Unit 14B gave way with a rusty groan. Inside, lit by weak sunlight from a plastic skylight, was a briefcase, black, fireproof, and heavy. On top, a note in Grandpa's shaky writing, "If they burn everything, open this." I cracked the latches with trembling fingers. Inside was a digital recorder labeled "Her Ears Only," a manila envelope, and a thick plastic binder. I pressed play. His voice again, tired, slower, but unmistakable. I tried to fix it, quietly. But they outmaneuvered me. David threatened to commit me. Helen had already forged one will before I caught it, so I did the only thing I could. I hid the truth where they'd never look. With you. The audio cracked. They want the company, Rachel. They want Marlowe Holdings. Not because they believe in it, but because they can't stomach the idea of you at the helm. But I gave it to you. Transferred every voting share to your name 3 weeks before they filed the false will. That's what they want to erase. I opened the manila envelope. Inside, my original birth certificate, dated and notarized. No sign of the Madsen name. Then, letters. Unmailed, dated over the course of years. Grandpa's handwriting, confessions, regrets, updates. They want your silence, but you're the only one they're afraid of. Below that, the Marlowe Holdings transfer documents. They were signed, sealed, and dated after my so-called death certificate, meaning one thing: they filed me dead to undo the transfer. And the last thing in the case? A deed to land under the original Marlowe office in my name. Grandpa had moved the title through a third-party trust. Quietly, legally, irrevocably. I snapped photos of everything, every will draft, every share certificate, every note. Then, I backed it all up to a cloud drive I'd created the night I saw the forged death record. Finally, I pulled out the burner phone and dialed the number for Madison Price Legal Group, one of the few firms in the city that handled both inheritance fraud and identity reclamation. "Hi," I said calmly. "I need to file a challenge against a probate filing and possible identity erasure. Do you have documentation?" the woman asked. "Plenty," I said, "and I'd prefer a discreet meeting." She paused, then gave me a time. 3:00 p.m. Enter through the alley. Ask for Olivia. You made it with 10 minutes to spare. The law office was inside a narrow gray building that looked like an accountant's back room. Olivia Price was older than I expected, maybe mid-60s, with silver hair pulled into a low bun and a voice that didn't waste syllables. "Sit," she said, tapping the table. I spread the documents out, showed her the USB, played the recording. Her face barely moved. "Do you have more?" she asked. I slid the digital will into place. "All right," she finally said, locking eyes with me. "You're going to be very unpopular soon." She explained the strategy. File a petition to invalidate the revised will. Submit evidence of coercion, death certificate fraud, and forged documents. Simultaneously reclaim identity through the state's error correction protocols. But you need to stay quiet, she warned. If they know what you're doing, they'll spin it. Right now, they think you're buried. Let them keep dancing. As I left, I passed 2 reporters standing outside the building. One of them glanced at me, probably mistaking me for an assistant. That was fine. That was perfect. The next morning, the internet lit up. Tessa and my parents had posted a smiling photo in front of the Marlowe building. Caption, "Legacy protected. First in line, always have been." I didn't post anything. Yet. But I forwarded the screenshot to Olivia with a note. "They're ready for Act 2. Her reply came instantly. "Let it bleed slowly." I stayed off-grid for the next 3 days. I used that time to print copies, notarize affidavits, even track down the retired notary who had signed the original transfer, Mrs. Janine Castro, now living in Asheville, who still remembered Grandpa with tears in her eyes. "He was scared," she said, "but he wasn't confused. He knew exactly what he was doing." By the end of the week, we had everything filed. Olivia handed me a clean copy of the challenge packet. I stared at it. "What happens now?" "Now," she said, "we let the system catch up to the truth." And it did. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The courtroom was stuffy, lined with worn wood and old portraits. My parents sat at the right table with a lawyer who looked like he practiced law like it was a reality show. Tessa was there too, her smile twitching every time she glanced in my direction. I wore black, simple, unapologetic. Olivia didn't speak until the judge, stern, female, and not one to suffer fools, called for opening remarks. "This is not a case of estate division," Olivia began. "This is identity theft, legacy laundering, and an attempt to extinguish legal autonomy through fraud." The opposing lawyer snorted. "Dramatic, Your Honor, but incorrect. The will was revised with full authority." Olivia slid a USB into the evidence laptop. Grandpa's voice filled the room. "If they're watching this, it means they did what I feared." He looked into the lens. "I changed the will back, not under duress, not out of confusion, out of clarity. I gave everything to Rachel because she earned it, because they don't get to write her out of my story." The silence afterward was thick. Then Olivia placed a document on the judge's desk, the fraudulent death certificate. "Filed 4 days after this transfer of shares," she said. "Someone tried to bury a living woman on paper." The judge didn't speak right away. She read every line of the transfer document, the notarized affidavit, and the false death certificate. Then she looked at me. "Miss Carter?" she said, using my legal name. "You're here to reclaim not just your rights, but your existence." I nodded, steady. "And you, sir," she said, turning to my father's lawyer, "have the burden of explaining why this court was misled with a legally certified death record for a person who's clearly alive and present." He cleared his throat, fumbling with papers. "Your Honor, I believe there's been some clerical—" "Save it," the judge snapped. "If you so much as breathe the word misunderstanding, I'll consider contempt." My mother leaned over and whispered something to him, face pale, her pearls now looking more like shackles than status. Tessa avoided my eyes entirely, and then the judge looked to Olivia. "Your filing requests restoration of estate control, reversal of all asset freezes, and full reinstatement of Miss Carter's identity." Olivia nodded. "Correct, Your Honor." "And punishment?" the judge asked. Olivia didn't flinch. "That's up to you." The ruling came quicker than anyone expected. "I've seen fraud," she said, "but rarely this deliberate." She ruled in my favor on every count. Full estate rights restored, control of Marlowe Holdings reaffirmed. The death certificate rescinded with prejudice, and then, turning to my parents, she added, "Pending investigation into the filing of a falsified death record, I am freezing your current accounts and assets. You are also barred from accessing any Marlowe subsidiary offices until further review. Court adjourned." The gavel hit like a thunderclap. I didn't look back as I walked out. On the courthouse steps, a reporter rushed toward me. "Rachel, Ms. Carter, do you have a comment? Anything for your family?" I paused, thought about everything. The ashes in the crystal tray. The voicemail from Tessa. The way my father's hand had tightened around the fake check before he set it on fire. "They already made their statement," I said, voice even. "EMI set fire to the only love that ever truly saw me." I walked away before the mic could move closer. The following week was surreal, not because I was celebrating, but because there was nothing to celebrate, just the quiet, slow return of things they'd tried to erase. My social security number, my bank access, my signature on company documents. I didn't post about it, didn't gloat, but quietly, subtly, everything changed. Olivia arranged for a press release confirming the ruling, framed as a protection of identity rights and estate law clarity. The firm was praised, my name was not mentioned. Perfect. Then came the email, from Tessa. No subject, one line. If I'd known what they were doing, I would have stopped it. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the message Grandpa had written and reread it again. "Don't let them shrink you. Not again." Weeks passed. Slowly, I began rebuilding. Not from the money, but from what I finally knew to be mine. I rented a new office. Quiet, simple. A place to start something I'd been sketching years ago. A mentorship nonprofit for girls aged out of the foster system who wanted to attend college. Grandpa's belief wasn't about legacy through inheritance. It was about making room for others to grow. I started with one intern, a second followed, and then a letter came in the mail. Handwritten, no return address. It was from Mel, Grandpa's former assistant who'd gone quiet after the estate dispute. Her note was short. "You've only scratched the surface. They didn't just want you gone, they wanted the narrative clean. Check the land titles for the Marlowe Institute property. Use the title number Grandpa gave you." I wasn't ready to open another door. But I did. Quietly, I logged into the National Deed database and entered the code. The land was registered not under the Madsen name, not even under Marlowe, but under my name, my original name, since 2017, a full year before Grandpa passed. Later that night, I stood in my apartment, looking at the now half-empty fireproof box. The real check was long deposited, the flash drive backed up and sealed. The scarf he gave me wrapped tightly around the birth certificate, the ownership deed, and the audio recorder. The air was still. I didn't hear from Tessa again, not directly, but she gave a podcast interview later that month. She talked about betrayal, about family pressure, about losing what she never truly earned. I didn't comment, didn't send a cease and desist. Let her have her echo chamber, because what they never understood is that peace doesn't come from punishment, it comes from release. The nonprofit grew slowly, intentionally, quietly. It was never about press or performance. It was about making space. One of the first girls we helped asked if Marlowe was my family's name. I smiled. "Not really," I said. "It was a name I inherited, but I prefer to earn mine." She nodded. "Cool," she said. "Mine's still evolving." And maybe that was the truest legacy of all. What would you do if you were in my shoes? If the people who raised you were the ones who tried to erase you? I'm curious what others would think. Was my decision right? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I'm still learning, still figuring it out, but if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this: silence can be a survival skill, but truth is the only thing that lets you breathe again.